Welcome, everyone. Another edition of D7 Pathways Virtual Academy. I'm your guide, James. Welcome back. Oh, now my cat's complaining because I'm yelling. She's going to get up and leave the room here in a minute. She doesn't like these because I'm talking to nobody in particular, and they're talking back. Welcome, as I say. Let's switch over to a live well, not quite completely live. Let's go to home. There we go, home. Toastmasters International. Tonight, I want to talk a little bit more about Basecamp Manager and a few things that I covered 2 weeks ago with some additional information that I just found out, and then some possibilities of questions and a few other issues that I've heard from other clubs. So let's get rolling. I am logged in currently as myself. I am not a Basecamp Manager, but I have permission to use a Basecamp Manager login for these purposes, training purposes through my club. But I am going to go into my Basecamp first to show you the first side of what I'm going to talk about tonight. And that we're going to start with requests for external training or giving a speech outside the club. All right, here we are. Basecamp proper. We'll make that a little bit bigger so it's not so hard to see. There, perfect. Now I'm going to go into my educational transcript by clicking on the friendly blue button. Inside of educational transcript, up until a couple weeks ago, I was only familiar with 3 different icons. The stacked books, which is curriculum, or this is a formal path. In this case, Pathways Guide, Pathways Mentor, Presentation Mastery, Strategic Relationships, and Visionary Communications are all the paths I have going on. Yes, I like having lots of irons in the fire, so to speak. Then there was this resource icon, which is evaluation forms and other items like that. And then this kind of a laptop image of a screen, which is videos. Well, I discovered a new icon. It's this one. It's a map icon, and it is the external training icon. That you can find by searching for training. Oh boy, now I can't remember. There it is. This lovely little button right up here, the ... gives you additional information. You can add an external training request. Now you might be asking, what is an external training request and why do I need to know about it? All right. Under the legacy system and in Pathways currently, if you do a speech outside of your home club, now not necessarily in another club that you're in, but completely outside of club, let's say at your work, or you go to the Rotary, or you're doing a presentation somewhere else, it is possible to use that presentation for credit for Pathways and the legacy system by getting permission from your VPE beforehand. Now, most of the time, that's been verbal permission. Usually, it's been kind of after the fact, sort of, I did this speech, and hey, can I use it for this project? And I'm going to do it anyway. It doesn't matter what you say. But under Pathways, they have made a formal external training request form so that you can create a request for your VPE to authorize your external training request, and it tracks it. This form here, you fill in your assignment, your description, you specify who's going to be present. In other words, who's going to be evaluating you. In other words, another Toastmaster so that you can get credit for your project. Then the start and end time, the path, the project, etc., and other information. Then once you click the submit file, that goes to your VPE for them to approve. You can see here, I have one that I've already created. It was a couple weeks ago. Doing project 2 in visionary communication. Now, if I click on my training details, this is going to bring up that form that I filled in. External training, it's very detailed. I'll get back to you. Okay, I was just having fun at the time. It's a pending approval because it hasn't been approved yet. And I specified John Doe was going to evaluate me. So this is all the information that I entered and sent to my VPE. Now, after I did that, a day or two later, my VPE sent me an email and said, hey, what's this? And what do I do with it? Well, I promptly said, do nothing. I'm going to use it for training. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So now you have seen the front end of where to find that external add external training request, which is under your transcript in the little dot button, add external training. I'm going to show you the backside of it inside of Basecamp Manager. To get there, I need to go all the way back to the front page of Toastmasters and change my login because I need to switch over to the VPE so that I have access to Basecamp Manager with his permission. So I log in, go into Pathways, access my path through Basecamp, and this is how you get to Basecamp Manager if in fact you are one, which is the Vice President of Education, the Secretary, and the President all have access to this, just those three people. And you have another friendly maroon button that says Login as Basecamp Manager, which I will click on there. Once you're inside of Basecamp Manager, you see 3 friendly blue buttons instead of the 5 in the Basecamp proper. You have Pending Requests, Member Progress, and Manager Tutorials. Spend a lot of time in Manager Tutorials if you're not familiar with Basecamp Manager. There's good information there, and it explains and takes you through the steps of doing all sorts of approvals. To find the external training request that I put in, I click on the pending requests. Now, coincidentally, this is the exact same place that level completion requests are, not different. You can see here I am on the left-hand side with my external training request, which has a different icon. It's got a little box with an arrow stuck in it. It's apparently speaking inside the box, and it's called external training, which is kind of an odd icon. I would think the arrow would be pointing outside of the box, being the box is probably your home club. Anyway, then the other 3 red, blue, green icon up here is the material. This is a level 1 completion request. And so that's how those are different. You hover over them, it gives you a pop-up arrow material. Here, pop-up arrow that says external training. Initial completion provides the date, and then on the right-hand side, underneath pictures, which I'm moving, you can see under options, you've got the green check mark and the red X. You have allow and deny. This level 1 completion request, we're just going to leave that there because that is a pending request for the VPE. I'm going to leave that alone. Now here, under the external training request, because I want to know exactly what it does, I am going to act like my VPE and approve this so that I can see what it looks like on my side, and so you can see as well. I will click the approval, which then takes it to enter any additional comments. This being approved, pending something fantastic. Okay. We're going to do that just to add that in there. I'm going to add my initials so that I know that I did it and submit that. Now you can see the request has disappeared. So ostensibly, it has been approved. Now, I would imagine that we switch back over to my account. It may not be instantaneous, but then again, it might. I don't know. So that's what we're going to find out. Going to move back to the home page. And, oh, there's no link to go back to. Oh, that's interesting because inside of Pathways, Basecamp Manager over. All right, we'll go back to the Pathways start page. There's our link. We jump here. Now we're back to Toastmasters. That's what I was looking for. Then I am logging out and logging back in as myself. Yes, there's several logins floating there for many purposes. Going into Pathways, accessing through Basecamp, and logging in as a member of my club. Educational transcript, and we're going to hold our breath to see if anything, due date. Okay, see, this has changed. It now says mark complete. I believe the last time we were here, it said pending approval. So I'm going to look at view training details. And status is registered. Yes, so before it said pending approval. So I marked it as approved, yes, I can go ahead and do this external training request, and that's what it shows up as. It shows up as registered. In other words, he's seen it, he said, yes, you may do this project, and therefore it is marked as register, and I now have a mark complete, which, because we're here, I'm going to do just to find out, because that's what I do. I click on things to find out. Click on mark complete. And now it has status pending completion approval, which means this has thrown it back to the VPE again. I feel like I'm playing my own version of table tennis here. Back and forth and back, except it's a whole lot slower. Okay, now we go back in as the VPE, and this, coincidentally, is how you could go through all 5 levels simply by clicking on stuff. Yeah, anyway, which you really don't want to do because it's not the best thing to do. All right, log in as Basecamp Manager again and see under pending requests how that showed up. Hey, look, I'm back again with a completion. Previously, it didn't show completion. Oh boy, I don't even remember what it said now. But it said something initial. I think it was initialize or, oh, well, I've totally forgotten. But now it says completion. So that matches the completion on level 1 completion. So now those two are exactly the same. So the VPE can approve the external training request, and then once it's done, comes back in here and approves the completion of the external training request. Those of you who are familiar with the legacy system, and even this one now, realize that this is probably a whole process that very few, if anyone, is ever using, because most of the time I don't ask permission first. Okay, technically I'm supposed to, but somewhere I heard the saying that it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission, and well, anyway. But within Pathways, we have a format to request external training, and here I have approved that. Fantastic. So while we're inside of Basecamp Manager, let's talk a little bit more about that. We did look at the pending requests, and we saw the level 1 completion request, and you can click on that green mark complete on the right-hand side, which will mark complete the level 1 completion for the member and allow them to move on to the next level. Until this happens, this member is not able to move on and look at the projects in the next level. Now, I do know that we don't want to approve this particular request because I talked to her, and when she got into Pathways, she went through every single project and looked at every single thing and checked off everything and went all the way through and completed all 4 projects in level 1 without actually doing a speech. She just sat down and read through everything and checked it and marked it and finished it and got the red check mark. So she hasn't actually finished all the speeches. I do believe she's about 3 speeches now and probably 1 more, and then this will be completed. But it is possible for a member to complete an entire level without doing the actual speeches. Now, this is kind of a conundrum because the VPE needs to be aware enough to realize that it is possible to generate a level completion without actually having completed the level per se. But there's also that other side of it. You don't want to be too much of the police officer with making sure that somebody has done absolutely everything. I believe in my position, which is what I did when I saw this one, even though I'm not the VPE, I asked her about this, and I asked the VPE about it, and they'd already had a conversation and explained that it was not an actual completion, it was a faux completion, which works out really well because I have something on the screen here that I can use for training. So I thanked her vociferously for putting in that completion and not completing the level, just so it can be here for multiple weeks for me to talk about. So that's the bonus side of this all. Okay, let's go back to Basecamp Manager. Actually, I need to pause here for a moment, considering I'm in babble mode as one of many of the one of my favorite YouTube personalities likes to use. Are there any questions?
I would like to look forward and check into the member progress section because I've tried some of that and I don't seem to successfully get to the people's names and levels that they're on.
Perfect. That's where we're going next. Larry, do you have any questions on what I've covered so far?
No, in the past, I've done a lot of external speeches because I've been, chairman of the budget committee for the county and chairman of the wage and salary committee. And that's how I got through my facilitator manual. And then I usually have one of them, sign that manual for me. But I always tell my people at the clubs what I'm doing. And so they know. So,
yeah, I honestly,
I haven't tried it on Pathways yet.
I've never used the external training for my external training speeches, and I've done several of those. So it's new, it's different. I thought I'd talk about it because it is new and different, and maybe people will start using it, and then VPs will be like, "Hey, what's this? I've never seen it before."
Yeah.
So, as we find new things, we play with it.
A lot of times, I'll grab a couple of people and we'll do a speech for the Women's Real Estate Association or maybe a Rotary Club, different things like that. And I think this would be handy. And we use it as mainly a membership platform to go out and sell a little bit. We put on a mini version of a Toastmaster meeting and have a lot of fun with table topics and try and get new members. So I think you could use this for that.
Absolutely. And it's a good way to track which way those go. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm finding now I'm having trouble figuring out which project I've completed and which one I haven't completed, because for training purposes, I'll go through and mark them off, but then I have to try and scratch my head to figure out if I actually gave a speech for it or not. So I think the external training would help me track that a little bit better. All right, let's move into member progress, like Janet requested. That's our second button right here, viewing member and learning reports. Clicking on that, you see the numbers on the side, individual progress. Oh, there's the external training one there at the bottom, but we're going to go for individual progress first. This is how you can find out who in the club is working what levels and how much progress they have made so far. You can see that it went through a refresh there before we came up. How you can get that refresh is this little down arrow and click the refresh. The directions are here. To see all members, first you select options and then refresh. That's this little arrow is options, then click refresh. Hover over a box below, then select the arrow, and then select View Details. So it is refreshed. You can see here that we have, in this particular club, these are all the paths that are currently active. And across the bottom tells you how many members are working each of those paths. So currently, there are 7 members working innovative planning. Now, if I wanted to see the names of who's doing what, I then click again on the arrow and click on View Details. This takes me to a more detailed page, which tells me exactly who is working on what. And this is everything for level 1. You can see on top, we've got that bar showing us how many people are in which. Then down at the bottom, you have title, username, count, training title, et cetera, et cetera. Right here, if we were looking at innovative planning, we can see we have 7 people listed for innovative planning. Here are the names of all the members in the club that have started and are working currently in level 1 of innovative planning. Here it shows the training title, and it also shows in progress. The in progress means that they have registered for the path and they have begun in it. In other words, they have opened curriculum, they have gone into the educational transcript and opened the path itself. Now, if you see down here under motivational strategies for this member right here, it says registered. Registers means that someone has purchased the path or has set the path up, but they have not gone in and started any part of that path. This could be somebody who just purchased the path and simply hasn't gone in and started working on it yet. It could be a brand new member that gets their path when they first register. I would recommend that if you see this registered and it stays, these right here, they stay registered. If they stay there for quite a while without changing, and if that particular member is not working on another path, I would suggest communicating with them and simply asking them the question, hey, are you having any difficulties getting into pathways and figuring out your path? It could be that they're having trouble with the browser, the UI, some aspect of that. And this is an indication of how you could initiate that conversation with someone who may be having trouble. Now, this particular member up here that is registered, I do believe that this member is no longer going to be with the club, so this may stay in a completely registered status. I think they've taken a hiatus and they're not going to be in the club. Now, the other registered, the one down here, I can see that the member has another path, innovative planning, that they're currently working on. So it could be that they purchased both paths at the same time and they've chosen to work in one, or they could work in two at the same time. So that's how you can figure that out. As well as on the right-hand side, you've got completion percentage. This right here, 5%, 10%. The 5% says that this member, the second person down here, Gabrielle, has done the icebreaker. The 10% is going to tell me, I'm going to say that they've probably completed project number 2. Then you have down here, you've got 15% for Catherine on motivational strategies. Now this, I believe, is that level 1 completion request. So a 15% is the completion for level 1, because remember, the percent complete is the entire path, 100% for all 5 levels. So level 1 accounts for only 15% of one path. So this is how you can see where members are inside their path, because you as the VPE can't actually see the project they're working on. But here you can see 5%, 5%, 5%. So a lot of people have completed their icebreakers. And then the second project is complete there. And here, clearly, we have the third project. So this shows all of those, shows them active, curriculum in progress, innovative, etc. Janet, do you have any questions on what we're looking at here?
No, and you made it look so easy to get there.
Well, good. That's exactly what I want to do. I want it to be easy. Perfect.
Yeah, I'm afraid I was stumbling around a bit.
Well, it isn't 100% clear which button you have to click on to get the details. I stumbled, if you watched 2 weeks ago video, I stumbled around before I figured out which button it was, even though I'd done it before. So to get out of this screen, since it is its own, it's actually a pop-up window, you can close the entire screen and it'll send you back to Basecamp Manager. And here you can see we have level 2 as well, and I can look at the details for the members inside that are working level 2. And you can see, wow, look at this percentages down here across the bottom. One member, I'd love to see 0.5 of a member working on a path. It's interesting how they break out the decimals, and anyway, intriguing. So we have 2 people that are working level 2 of a path. And this, yes, that is true. Strategic relationships. I am working on level 2 of strategic relationships. In fact, I'll be giving one of those speeches tomorrow night at a different club for that matter. So that's where we can see that. And as you can see here, level 3, level 4, and level 5 are blank. Now, the first time I saw this, I had to scratch my head because I'm also currently working level 5 of presentation mastery. But you can see here, it doesn't show up at all. And even if I click the refresh details, it won't show up. I had to try and figure this one out, and I finally have come to a hypothesis which seems to be supported by the evidence. The reason why I am not showing up in this club as being working inside of level 5 is because I gave my level 1 and level 2 to this club, but when I completed level 3 and 4, I gave them to a different club. So in the progress for an individual, it matters what club they give their level completion to, because as you can see, I don't show up as being working in level 5 because, my theory, I gave these other 2 completions to an entirely different club. If I had access to that club, to actually going in and looking there, then I might be able to back up that hypothesis with some actual data and turn it into a, well, I don't know, at that point, a theory, I suppose, would be the best way to put it. And I am working on that. I'm hoping in 2 weeks I'll have a definitive proof of my working hypothesis. So this is the individual progress screen. Then you have the path progress screen, which gives you pretty much the same information, but it breaks it down in a slightly different way. You have the status of all paths, the paths in progress, and the paths not yet started. Now, you remember on that one sheet that we saw those 2 people that were registered. Well, that's motivational strategies and presentation mastery. We have 1 person for each of those that has registered and didn't start. So if you come in here and you find the registered, you want to know who they are, you can simply just go to view details, and it will tell you specifically, exactly, who the 2 people are that have registered and aren't working in that path. So it's breaking down the information that we saw on the individual progress screen. It's just breaking it down by path instead of by member. You still get a sense of, how many members are working which path, which is so far registered or in progress, and theoretically paths completed. Now, I imagine once I finish level 5, I haven't decided which club I'm going to give it to. I'll probably give it to this club just so I can see if it shows up here since I have access to this one. Or if I complete level 5 in the new year, I'm going to be VPE of that club, hopefully. Then I'll be able to look at it and see if it shows up. Then on number 3, path type. Well, it's very clear that every single person in this club opted for the online path type. In other words, no one is doing pathways manuals. This is how you could figure out if people are working the online method or the manuals. And you can see there is no listing for manuals, and all 27 members who are registered in paths. And if we go back to path progress, we can, add all of these up and you're going to hit 27. Every single one of those has chosen to go with an online format. That, of course, is going to change if you're in a club where somebody is doing simply manuals. Then you have another filter, recently selected paths. This shows you within the last month how many people have chosen which path. So 1 person within the last month did visionary communication and 2 people innovative planning. I'm going to guess, let's see here, if we can look at details. Yes, details. We can see who in the last month has started those paths. And yeah, that's me. I just picked up visionary communication, active on right there. March 18th is when I purchased that path and started into it. So then you can see the other people have picked up their paths.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, James, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Can a non-officer access any
No.
of this stuff?
No.
Can a
This
non-officer? Okay.
is only limited to base camp manager, the VPE, the president, and the secretary of the club. No one else can see this information.
And
Yep.
we all wish they could.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. Because
this was some in the background over these problems.
I really hope they open it up.
Did you get my note today? Did you get my note today I sent you?
Yeah, I did see that.
Oh, okay.
But the indication is so far that Toastmasters just wants to
Because I locked my off.
with VPE.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. As well as they're not
Okay.
interested in opening up the notification to anybody besides whoever is in the contact for the club, which limits that to the VPE. Although there may be there are a few ways to make it so that several people in the club get a notification of level completion. One of those that I found, a club has kind of a generic email for their club, and then everything that comes into that email is then forwarded to various people. Another person told me that they set up an automatic filter, so anytime a level completion comes into them, it's automatically forwarded to the VPE, the president, and the secretary. And they simply set up a filter for the subject line, because the subject line for level completions is always the same. And then there's a third method through Free Toast Host, which I'm researching, and hopefully we'll have more information on the next session. Yeah, that word.
There may be another way to do it, James, because
I don't doubt it.
on the Pathways Guide website or on Facebook, someone had created a way to set up multiple emails through Gmail, and they would all go to various people, including the entire club if they wanted it to.
Yep. Heard about that one too. Yeah.
I don't know anything about Gmail, and I'm not sure I want to.
It's just a free email service. I know I use Outlook with Gmail addresses, and I can put in filters to automatically do stuff to things inside of Outlook. You can do some filters inside of Gmail and then automatically forward them. But yeah, it as with any computer program, it takes a level of familiarity or just digging around and kicking into the corners with a flashlight to figure out how it works. Just like Pathways.
Yeah. Lots of corners.
Yep.
Not enough time.
So here, under external training requests, I'm doing a refresh. And it looks like nothing's popping up. My guess is because it was completed, it's not showing as a status anymore. Oh, well, I guess I shouldn't have completed it. Then it probably would have showed up under the external training request. Arrow view details. I'm waiting for it to refresh to see if it's spinning. Oh, will it last refreshed? Oh, yeah, over a month ago. So we might actually see something in a minute here. But anyway, are there any other questions or direction for where we want to go after this from either?
Yeah, I got a general question. We go through our new elections and clubs. Where does the new VPEs get their training?
TLI.
They're going to have to go through all
the
will there be a VPE Academy or something?
I am going to be at TLI doing a session in the morning and a session in the afternoon specifically related to Pathways. It's going to be open to everybody. I did this at the January TLI. A lot of people came to both sessions. We answered a bunch of questions. I'm planning on doing the exact same thing. That is going to be that's where we're going to start. I'm in negotiations now to see about continuing this online training into next year. I don't know if that'll continue because my schedule gets kind of crimpy, but we'll see about that. Okay, nothing came up under external training requests. So apparently I've completed it. It's gone. Poof. So that, in a nutshell, is Basecamp Manager, the pending requests, the member progress, and then you have access to a bunch of tutorials here, overview, information, completion, tracking, projects. I mean, it breaks it all down. Every single one of these has its own subfolders and bunch of information to find out about. So by all means, use this as a resource. I am willing to do research and find stuff out and offer answers to people, because I know sometimes it's just a pain to try and schedule time to get in and figure it out. That's what I'm hoping these videos are all about. That's why I record them and put them on YouTube for other people to watch. Okay, so are there any questions on Basecamp Manager at all?
Can you think of a good way to start training the presidents and the secretaries on this?
Well, TLI is our best bet, and I know a lot of the officers don't make it there.
Yeah, they sure don't.
I would hope that clubs emphasize the fact that whoever's going to be the VPE needs to be savvy enough with computers and comfortable enough with computers to be able to work. Okay, Larry, thanks a lot for letting me know. All right, so we're done with Basecamp Manager. I am going to log out of this account so we can go back into Basecamp proper under my login, which I'm doing now. Bing. Logging in. Okay. One of the questions that I ran into this week from actually Central Oregon, several of the clubs over there are having issues with the notification emails. In other words, how do the level completion requests get to the VPE? It is not as clear as you would hope it would be. Now, Toastmasters knows who the VPE is, so one would think that they would be able to send emails directly there. That is not the case. The person that is receiving the emails, and I will show you how to check that in Basecamp Manager, is not always the VPE. In fact, it is the person who is on file with Toastmasters International as the contact individual for the club. I'm logging in as a member into my home club. If I wanted to find out who the level completion requests are going to, I'd go to this big search box up here and start typing club. Now you can see here it's club 000 and 1361. That is the number of the club, and it says Basecamp Manager. This is the profile for the Basecamp Manager. This email address right here is letting me know that all level completion requests currently are being sent to this email. Now that happens to be the VPE for the club, which is a good thing. It wasn't always that way. When we first started into Pathways, this email was in fact the treasurer. And the reason being is the treasurer was on file for many, many years as simply being the contact person for the club, handled all of the club communication requests through Toastmasters International, and been happy to do so for many years. Well, now it turns out that whoever is registered needs to also have access to Basecamp Manager. Because the first time I completed my first level, and this was back in October of last year after we rolled out, the system generated an email and sent it to our treasurer that said, hey, a member has completed their level. Please process this so they can move on. Well, he spent about an hour and a half trying to figure out how he could get the Basecamp Manager to approve the level completion request, simply for me to tell him he had no authorization to get there because he was treasurer. And I wanted to figure out who was getting the notifications. Once we knew that, we got the email changed to the right person. So naturally, the follow-up question is, how do you change this email? Good question. I'm glad you asked that. Go back to the home page for Basecamp Manager, and then I'm going back to Toastmasters Pathways start page, linking there. You can also just go directly through your browser. Then I'm going into Leadership Central. Once I am in Leadership Central, click on Club Central. Now, this you can only change if you are an officer in the club. I am an officer in one of the 3 clubs I'm a member of, so I can show this to you. Now I have to remember where it is. Okay, contact right there, club contact and meeting information. Click on that. This here, the email address right here, and those of you who are paying attention know that this email address is different than the one I just showed you. That's because that was one club and I'm an officer in a different club, so that's why they're different. But this email address under club contact and meeting information is where all of the level completion requests for pathways are being sent. This is also the same email address if somebody comes in and does find a club, types in the zip code or the area for wherever your club is, and clicks on that. The hovers over the email of the club, you look down, whoops, you can't do it. But if you look in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, it actually shows the email address for who this is going to. A little line that says mail to, and it gives an email address. That's who's it's being sent to, and that's the VPE for the club that I'm looking at, New Horizons. So the email address that's on file is the email that is going to be receiving all contact requests and all level completion requests. So you're getting pathways and you're getting regular Toastmasters international email. Now, this is where it would be really good, and a lot of clubs have been able to do this. They put an email address in Club Central under the contact. Oftentimes, they'll put a generic email address in here that then has a filter that if it has a particular subject line, it is automatically forwarded to one person. Like if it's a contact, the subject line for contact email addresses is always the same. Same with if it's an email for a level completion request, the subject line is always the same, level completion request. So one club I know simply filters by that, and then the email is forwarded on to the correct person. There is a possibility you can put through Gmail, put one in here, and then a generic, which then branches out to sub emails. I mean, there are lots of different ways. Janet mentioned that on the pathways, I don't know, I'm going to Facebook page. Somebody was talking about how they did that there. That's another great resource. Facebook or the online discussions about how to work with pathways. Lots of information out there. Absolutely. So remember, the email is under the contact, as well as you can find out who that email is under pathways by simply searching the club. You don't have to be an officer in your club to do the search here. You do have to be an officer in your club to change the email under Club Central. Just a point of awareness for that. All right, we are looking at about 12 minutes to go, and I am mentally scratching my head for, there was one other issue I ran into this week. Oh, yeah. But that one was that was actually Larry. I was following Larry's email trail about the problems he was having with the browsers, and I think, Larry, that primarily turned out to be unique to you and you alone, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it had a lot of dangling things.
Yeah. Yeah, for some reason, he
that
had absolutely no access to getting inside into pathways, even though everything said that he was supposed to be able to. And then he replicated the problem for Toastmasters. They scratched their collective head, and they've sent it off to the IT department to figure it out, which is good. Because if he's running into that problem, somebody else is going to run into it too.
Mainly if you're in multiple clubs, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
That was the problem here. I was multiple.
Well, then I've been very fortunate because
when one folds and you're off the list.
Yeah.
It's strange because Basecamp doesn't know a lot of details that you and I know and are accustomed to, and especially when officer changes. And I was secretary in one club. When I lost that, I the ability to be recognized. And they did away with all the officers. Basically, I was out of pathways. That's
Yeah,
kind
that
of what
totally
happened.
wiped out your access.
And because I wasn't an officer, anyway, you got the whole thing when I emailed.
Yep, I did, and I'm glad that they're working
It
on
was
it.
a learning experience for them.
Yep, absolutely. You know, I've run into a few bugs over the months I've been working on it, and sent emails to TI, and they've pursued them. A few of those still exist, but several, actually the majority of them, seem to have been worked out. So, you know, they're responsive, and I like that. I like the fact that they're working on it. I know they actively want to create a product that everybody's going to like and enjoy and work with, which is great. I myself am enjoying Pathways.
Mhm.
I'm finding a few unique things about Pathways that are different than the legacy program. I am having a little bit harder time tracking projects by name because inside of the educational transcript, I know that I've completed a project, but I don't necessarily know which one it was. And I say that because I've got presentation mastery, strategic relationships, and visionary communication all going at the same time. And especially strategic relations and visionary communication, I'm working level 1 at the same time. So I gave icebreakers in both of those, but I don't particularly recall which icebreaker was which one. And inside of the curriculum, there's no way to record what your icebreaker was or even the date that it was completed. And under Legacy, that was real easy to do because I have the manual right there with the completed date. Now, I do have my evaluation forms, but I didn't write which path I was working on my evaluation form. I simply have an icebreaker evaluation form that shows when I did it. So I'm going to find a better way of tracking that just for my own, well, for my own purposes, I guess, and the ability to, you know, figure out which speeches were done. And that may be just something unique for me. I know that inside of the profile for, or at least my own profile, when the legacy program stuff was entered for educational awards, the titles of the speeches are also included, but you hit the drop down arrow and I get the title and the name of where I did that particular speech. You know, all of these are the various titles, but yet for strategic relationships, all I have is just a level completion date. So I feel like I'm missing a little bit of data on that one. I feel a bit more disconnected from the projects that I actually did than in the legacy system. And I'd love
because
it.
the old days you could get down to,
Yeah. You know, I could see, oh yeah,
you used to get
I
the name of the
remember this
speech you
speech
had.
and I gave it on this date. And I remember that speech and I gave it on this date. But I can't do that with any of these. As you can see, there are a lot of pathway stuff that's completed, but even inside of pathways, there's no additional information or ability to find that information. So I'm finding that I need a different way of tracking my own progress.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
With me, I've punched stuff into a notebook, which means I've printed out my icebreaker and the second part, the third part, and I've put my speech and my evaluation clipped together, stapled together so that I have it. But you could easily write your, visionary communication on the top of your icebreaker or whatever it happened to have been.
Yeah. And that's, an absolute great way of tracking it. There's kind of this disconnect because under the legacy program, all of that information is tracked digitally right here when the award was processed. But yet now that we're in an online format where everything is digital, that information doesn't exist anymore. So it's almost, to me, it feels like kind of a step backwards in the ability to track the individual projects.
Yeah,
But yet, you know,
perhaps Toastmasters will have to
yeah,
step up their game and make the input the same way as we used to do it with speech, name, assignment 2, assignment 3, whatever,
yeah,
name and date.
maybe, or they may not even want to do that. They may think that this information is extraneous and doesn't need to be here, and simply the completion dates. Either way, that's fine. It's just it's kind of that paradigm shift for how I track things,
Yeah,
because I'm trying not to have stacks and stacks and stacks of old papers laying around, and that's why I like us going online. So, it's
good
just something
point.
different that I'm noticing. I've also kind of noticed, and I'm wondering, maybe if you're running into this, Janet, is that with pathways, I feel a little less connected to the club experience because I'm not actively seeking roles for a CL manual.
Yeah, but I still think you're going to get those roles as you move along in the different levels. I really do, because there's certain things like when you are the Toastmaster or the evaluator or whatever, there is a place to put that in so
Yeah.
that we can say that we've done it. But I know the farther we advance, the more leadership type things we're going to see.
I hope so. I mean, that would be really good because, yeah, right now you've just got the ability to put a date in here.
Right.
As I started putting the dates in, but then stopped doing them because it's like, well, meh. That this is tracked for my club, and I didn't really feel that I needed to track it myself. So, and it may tie into something in the future, which it could be good. Could be very good that way.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're down to the last 5 minutes and just you and me. So, you have any final questions?
Not that I can think of at the moment.
All right. Well, cool. Whoops. No, no, no. Hit the wrong button. Pause, stop. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.